to me that I'll be absent for several days from school each month because of my period without knowing why or what I can do to prevent this in the future. This is why we need mandatory education about endometriosis so we can support our young schoolgirls and help them to get the best start when they're in school and know that they don't have to be in pain.
So my story is I started getting symptoms quite young, definitely in my teens and about high school. It took over 10 years for me to actually be diagnosed at 23. Since then I've had 2 surgeries, 18 months apart, and been on multiple different hormonal treatments, and I'm now currently over 8 months pregnant with my first baby. Yeah, I guess that would be my story. Essentially, it took a long time to get to diagnosis. Just flitted around to multiple different doctors, and everyone's sort of saying it was all in my head, or just, you know, it was just a period. I prepared my body for over 4.5 years, working towards, you know, getting it in the best shape possible before conception. So that was with the 2 surgeries, hormonal treatments, multiple at once, medical menopause, and then I was given, because of my secondary diagnosis of adenomyosis, I was given a 0.04 chance of conception. And then when we started, we tried naturally and with assistance from Clomid, and yeah, we were successful. So really, but that's also potentially due to the fact that I'm also 26, and I've thought about, well, I've sort of been made to consider starting it a bit earlier than maybe I thought I would. Yeah.
We don't seem to have escaped the effects of endometriosis for the whole of our coexistence in adult life, and unfortunately it seems to have been passed on to Alessandra, our daughter, and we're hoping that medical improvements and discoveries will make life easier for Alessandra and all those who have endometriosis.
Endometriosis to me is quite a battle, I think, in terms of all the physical sort of elements and symptoms of endometriosis. There's the pain, and that's your cramps, your backaches, your migraines that come along with it, but there's also definitely a mental side, I think, and it takes a really big impact on your mental health. And I think that's sort of coping with the uncertainty of endometriosis, and you never know what's coming. I don't know if I'll get my period or if I'll have it for 8 weeks. I don't know if it will be really heavy, if it'll be light, how much pain I'll be in, and the bloating, the endo belly, that also takes a really big impact on my mental health. So every month I could go between a size 8 and a size 12 basically, because of the bloating and the swelling that occurs with my endometriosis. And that's not even just in my belly, that's, you know, my ankles will swell to the point where some of my pants won't fit over them, things like that. It's a whole picture. Endometriosis affects so much. It really isn't just about having a few pains right sort of in your belly or anything like that. It's so much more, and I think the battle for me is sort of being able to cope with both the physical and the mental aspects. And it's incredibly anxiety provoking, because you just don't know as well how much pain you have to prepare yourself for.
Before my best friend was diagnosed with endometriosis, I'd never really heard about it before. And even after learning of the diagnosis, I still couldn't really fully understand what endo was. I think that being a spouse, a family member or a friend to someone suffering from endo can be a really challenging thing if you don't fully understand the scope of the illness. At first, not knowing what to say or how to react to the pain made me feel like I was being a bad friend, and because of this I educated myself. I think it's so important to understand the symptoms, treatments, different reactions to different types of medications, and how that can affect someone suffering from endometriosis. And I think most importantly, it's so important to understand that no 2 days are the same for someone suffering from endometriosis.
As someone who has witnessed close family members struggle with endometriosis over the past few years, I've had a first-hand insight into the struggles that they have had to endure. Admittedly, if I hadn't watched these girls go through this, I honestly would not have known what endometriosis was, let alone how it could affect one's life. There is so little awareness about the crippling disease that is endometriosis. Something that is known so little about, that affects 10% of all women, is truly saddening. There is always hope for a cure, but it starts with recognition and awareness.
I think for me, at the time of diagnosis, endometriosis was the end of the world. I was 18 years old and I was training somewhat full-time for athletics. And at the time, I just didn't really understand how it worked and how it was capable of not only the amount of physical pain it could bring, but also how it affected my mental health. Been experiencing really painful periods and menstrual migraines because of the hormonal imbalance in my body. These migraines would affect the right side of my body. It would make me get pins and needles down my arm and my leg and cause my eyelid to droop, and my hearing would be more blocked on the right side. For me, endometriosis has just become something that I've had to accept and live with, and just, realize that for the time being there's not much that I can do besides try and manage my pain and try and have more good days than bad.
Endometriosis is not just a disease, it's a life-changing, debilitating disorder. It's the disease that makes decisions for you and things that you have no choice in. It took away my womanhood at 28, which is way too young. The one thing nobody knows is that when I was a child I wanted 4 children, but that wasn't possible because that was a choice endometriosis made for me. To be told at 20 that you need to start trying for a child is incredibly daunting. But I wouldn't change it for the world because I have the most amazing daughter from it. But it's also something that, once again, I had no choice in. I was lucky enough to have 3 amazing children, but also lost 2 little angels along the way as well, once again, due to endometriosis. Now I live in fear of what will happen now from being on HRT for 20 years. There's so many side effects: breast cancer, blood clots, heart attack, stroke, and you're constantly worrying that that's going to happen because I was on HRT for so long. But my biggest fear that I live with is that my girls could get the biggest fear that I live with is that my girls could get endometriosis and that I actually pass that disease on to them. And it's something that no mother wants to live with. My first diagnosis in 1984 was for appendicitis. Then in 1985 it was cysts on the ovaries. Then they finally discovered in 1986 it was endometriosis. In and out of hospital every 2 years to get it burnt away. It kept coming back. Even after 9 months of pregnancy it came back. The sad thing is 32 years later there's still no cure.
Endometriosis had gone into my fallopian tubes, so the scarring stopped the ability for the embryo to move. The pain was excruciating. The loss of a longed-for pregnancy was more excruciating. any young woman wanting to start her family, I want to say to you, learn about your bodies, learn about your feminine health. I did have a happy ending. We must look at our health. Mothers and daughters must talk about women's feminine health openly. We must talk to doctors about it openly. I'm so glad this is 2018 and not the 70s and the 60s where we didn't talk about it. I'm so glad that we have created a voice, and I want you to be loud with your voice.
To me, endometriosis is our best kept secret. This is a disease that affects 1 in 10 women worldwide, and it doesn't discriminate. I've went to an all-girls school since grade 5. I've spent most of my working career surrounded in an all-female environment, and I only found out about this disease 2 years ago at 31 years of age. I had watched one of my staff members and a good friend struggle with chronic pain and misdiagnosis for an extremely long time. When she finally came to me and said she'd learned she had endometriosis, I felt relieved and happy for her that she had found an answer. How wrong was I? After watching her have her 4th surgery and feeling completely helpless, we sat down and decided that we would hold an annual event to raise awareness and funds. Being on this journey, it's enabled me to have many conversations about endometriosis, and I'm reminded daily how many people have this disease and how many people know nothing about this disease. How can we know so little about a disease that is more common than diabetes?